Hi all, I'm Professor Tina Good, and this mini video discusses how to go about writing a thesis statement for an expository essay. Okay, so expository is simply something that explains something, expository, explaining something. So it's opposite, say, of a creative writing, fictional type of work, or even a larger category of nonfiction writing that is not generally considered to be a narrative. Okay, while it may include narratives in it, is not considered to be a narrative essay, and so has a different kind of organization. Okay, so we're going to talk first about how to write a thesis statement for such an essay. First, though, let's talk about what it is not. Okay, because whenever I ask this question, I always get the answer like, what is a thesis statement? I always get the answer, it's the main idea of your essay. Okay, that's starting the discussion of what a thesis statement is, but it is much more than just the main idea. If you were to just go with the main idea, you're not going to be specific enough for your essay. Okay, so instead, what I want you to think about with your thesis statement is something that you are going to prove in your expository essay um, using rhetorical persuasion and or evidence. Okay. And so let me go ahead and share my screen now because I have a great handout here that I have posted on Brightspace for you to examine. And this kind of begins to give you some idea of what to think about when writing a thesis statement. Okay. Okay, so this handout is a handout that is created by the Writing Center at University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, right? And it begins to tell us different kinds of thesis statements, right? But what we learn is that a thesis statement, as you may know, is simply a single sentence that generally comes at the end of your introduction that states what your position is, usually within some kind of an argument, an argument in the broadest sense of the word, that you're going to take a position in this particular paper, and you're going to be able to capture that in one sentence, especially for short essays, right? You should not ever have to go beyond, a single sentence to give your thesis statement for, say, like a 3 to 5 page essay. If you were writing a book, you might have a more complex thesis statement, but for this short of an essay, you're going to want to keep it limited to one sentence. It can be, a compound sentence, but you should be able to keep it to one sentence. And I should be able to go to your introduction, right? Introduction doesn't necessarily mean one paragraph, although again, with a short essay, you probably do want to keep it to 1 to 2 paragraphs, but I should be able to go straight to your introduction, go to the end without even reading the introduction and go like, okay, here's what we're going to be proving in this essay. Okay, very clear. And it should summarize that position. Also, a thesis statement is something that needs to be proven, beyond the idea of listing. Okay, so for example, you don't want to prove something like most trees have leaves, right? Because then all you have to do is go around and list all of the trees that have leaves and, sort of maybe categorize those, as opposed to the evergreen that have needles, and that's it. So, okay, so what? So what have you proven? Right? We already knew that for one thing, and it's really not worth proving. And you didn't need a lot of evidence to analyze to prove that, right? You just were listing. So we want to go beyond something that just takes, listing of experiences to prove it, right? Because somebody could come along and list another list of experiences that were the opposite, and Nobody has proven anything, and in fact, perhaps has created, a hostile environment, from which we cannot produce a critical conversation. All right. So you also want your thesis statement to answer a question, and while you're in college, most of the time, especially as an undergraduate, you're going to have writing prompts that provide you with the question that the professor wants answered. Okay. Now, for my class, my writing prompts are intended to be guidelines. So I will provide perhaps many questions within the prompt to stimulate your brain, to start thinking about a certain topic, and help you with thinking through that. But it should not be looked at as like you have to answer every single question in it, but more as guidelines to help you focus your ideas around, what you want to write about. Okay, so let's take a look at this handout. Let's see what it says. All right, and if we go down to this idea of position, you want to make sure that somebody could thoughtfully uh, argue against your position, or take a different position, even if it's not directly against your position, but looks at it from a different perspective. You want to make sure that somebody can do that, right? Because otherwise, there's no point in writing about it. So when you're talking about it, your thesis statement is going to be somewhat of a roadmap that's going to lead us through your argument. It's going to make a claim that others might take a different perspective on. Um, and it's also going to connect to a larger topic, right? It can't be something that nobody cares about. So you're going to want to write about something that matters, that's relevant in today's world, to your particular audience. And we'll talk more about audience as we move forward in the semester. Okay. So how do we go about writing that? Well, listen, you shouldn't think that I have to come up with my thesis statement right away, and that's what I have to write about. Writing a thesis statement is again like an iterative process. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to read the assignment. You're going to want to conduct readings of your own. In these beginning assignments, I will give you readings that I want you to read and think about. As you go forward, you might, have different readings that you want to process that may or may not be assigned. So you're going to want to be reading. And then you're going to want to be brainstorming, right? Whether it's free writing on the topic, whether it's clustering on the topic, whatever you've decided is your best way for stimulating ideas towards this idea of writing. You're going to want to do that. And maybe that's going to take you back to writing, to reading a little bit more. And you're going to go back and forth until reading the assignment, until you start coming up with that single sentence. But even then, we're going to call that a working thesis statement. Okay. It's not something that locks you into the paper. It gives you guidance for what you want to write about. But as you start writing, you may begin to narrow your thesis statement. You may begin to hone it towards a different perspective. You may, as you start writing, discover that you disagree with your thesis statement and you want to write a different thesis statement, right? So whatever that is, that's fine. Again, think of it as this iterative process, going back and forth until you have a thesis statement that guides your essay and your essay proves your thesis statement. Okay. So how do you know if you have a strong thesis statement once you have, your solid draft of your essay and a solid draft of your thesis statement? First of all, do you answer the question, right? In college, one of the things that we talk about a lot is not only coming up with the answers, but learning how to ask questions. And that is no less important in writing. So, you certainly want to make sure that you've responded to the prompt, right? But have you narrowed that prompt to answering question that you're interested in answering? And you want to make sure that you've actually answered the question, that you haven't you haven't been vague about your answer, but that you've actually answered the question. Um, have you taken a positions that somebody else might oppose or have a different perspective on, right? Um, and is your thesis statement specific enough? And we're going to talk about that just in a moment. But this is the number one thing that I run into with students is that their thesis statement is not specific enough. That I always say, you've got to go one more step. What is it exactly that you're proving? And I'll give you an example in just a moment of what is not specific. Okay. Um, and then this idea of so what? Now, hopefully, in our writing assignments for this semester, the so what is clear. But why does it matter? Why does it matter? Or why should it matter to your defined audience? How does it connect to things that are important today? And then, of course, you're going to want to make sure that your essay is supporting that thesis without wandering off. Um, and so those are the important things that I want you to take a look at. So in an expository writing, here is an example of a bad thesis statement. And yet I'm going to tell you, I get a lot of thesis statements like that. Okay, so here's an example. Social media impacts public awareness in both positive and negative ways. Okay, this does not need proving. You have not taken a position in anything. You've stated a vague statement that you can kind of write about. It's not going to control your essay in any way. It's going to allow meandering. And in the end, it doesn't matter, right? Because nobody can disagree with that, right? So use these questions to sort of help you figure out whether or not you have a specific enough thesis statement, right? Do I answer the question? Have I taken a position that some others might oppose? No, you have not, right? In this kind of way. Is it specific enough? No. Even if you were to narrow that down to social media impacts public awareness in a positive way, that's not specific enough, right? What is that positive way? Or if you wanted to say social media impacts public awareness in negative ways, still not specific enough, right? You want to be very specific about what that negative way is, okay? And then we're starting to narrow that down, okay? And of course, does it pass the so what test, right? Why would anybody care about how you are answering that question? Okay, so here's an example of perhaps, a better thesis statement. Because not every voice on social media is reliable. Okay, so you're setting a context. Because not every voice on social media is reliable, people have become much more critical consumers of information and thus more informed voters. Okay, so you can see that that statement is suggesting that social media has a positive impact on public awareness, but it's going way beyond that. It is stating very clearly, right, the ways in which social media has a positive influence, right? Because not every voice on social media is reliable, right? We, as a consumer of social media, have had to develop critical skills, right, in order to vet through these voices on social media. And because we are able to be more critical of social media, we are more informed voters. Okay. Thus, showing that we are more publicly aware, right? We're not just taking in things blindly and going, oh, but because our critical skills have been developed through the consumption of social media, we are now informed voters. Now, that's going to be a very controversial topic. Not everybody's going to agree with that, right? Other people are going to say no, that we are taking in misinformation and that is making us, not informed voters. Okay, so we can see that there is an opposing side to this or a different perspective to this, right? So that not only do you have an arguable thesis statement, but that it's specific, that is seeking to answer this question about, the effects of social media, right? It's clearly something that matters in the world, or at least in the country today. So it clearly answers the so what question. Okay. So again, just to conclude, when you're writing your thesis statement, do not start out and trying to write that perfect thesis statement before you even start writing your essay. You will come up with writer's block and you won't be able to proceed with your essay, right? But go back and forth between your free writing, your reading of the assignment, your reading of certain articles, reflecting on your own experiences with this topic, and you want to being in specific moments, specific experiences, specific stories, not general ideas, right? Go back and forth, come up with that working thesis statement, make sure that it guides you. And once you've got a full draft, you can go back and ask these important questions about whether or not your thesis statement takes a specific position that somebody could have a different perspective on, and whether or not it fulfills the assignment. Okay, I hope you have found this video useful, and we'll continue to talk about the writing process in future videos as we continue on with future assignments. All right, so I hope you're having a great day and good luck with your writing.